Hello friends, this is Sanjay. In this video, we'll be talking about child development, that is the concept of development and its relationship with learning, which is part of the Karnataka TET CDP syllabus for paper 1 and paper 2 as well. In this part, we will start with a comparison of growth versus development. We'll look at the various stages of development, the process of development. We'll understand what is learning, and we will look at what is the relationship between growth, development and learning, the various aspects of development, the factors which affect development, and we will also solve 5 sample questions from previous question papers so that we can understand what type of questions are created on the basis of these topics. Growth and development are two different concepts which should not be confused with each other, because growth refers to the physical or quantitative changes in a person, such as height, weight or size of various external or internal organs. And growth may stop at some point in time. For example, the height of a person will stop increasing after a particular age, and the size of the bones of a person will stop increasing after a particular point in time. Therefore, growth may stop at some point in life. Now, growth is quantitative because it is physical in nature. It means that it can be quantified or measured, such as the height of a person can be measured or the weight of a person can be measured. And coming to development, development is a process that creates growth, because development includes physical growth. It also includes other aspects like language development, emotional development, cognitive, social or moral development. Therefore, development is a much bigger concept which includes growth. And development continues throughout a person's life, because while the height of a person might stop increasing after a particular age, the person continues to develop in some of the other aspects throughout his or her life. For example, the person's language might keep on increasing. The person's social skills or moral development may keep on happening till the person is alive. Therefore, development continues throughout the person's life. We frequently see questions about the various stages of development, because development is divided into various stages based on the age of the person. If you look at the different stages of development, it starts with the prenatal period, which is the period before birth. Then comes infancy, which is birth to 2 years, early childhood, late childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and even adulthood, which is 18 plus, has been divided into various stages such as early, young, mature, and aging adulthood. Now, I've put an asterisk on the term age because if you look at different books, you'll see that there are some minor differences in this classification. For example, some books may say early childhood is from 2 to 5 years, and some books may say late childhood is 6 to 11 years. So such minor variations do not matter, because these are differences based on different cultures and different scientists, and it depends on different countries as well, because how they classify each of these stages might have some minor variations. This table is very important because very often we see questions asking us what is the significance of these different stages of development and what actually happens to the child or the person during these different stages. For example, in the prenatal period, there is development of something called newborn reflexes, which is the reflexes that are required for the child to survive after he or she is born. And then the child is also learning to respond to sound, because very often we hear mothers telling us that they can feel the baby kicking in their womb when the baby hears a particular song or a particular sound. So that is the response to sound. And then in infancy, the child is learning to identify people, especially people who are going to satisfy its basic needs. That is, who is going to feed the child? It will be the mother. So the child learns to recognize the mother. And then the father plays with the child. So the child learns to recognize the father. And the child is also learning to respond to various sensory stimuli. For example, the child might look at the direction of a sound. The child might follow a particular moving object with its eyes. So these are the responses to various sensory stimuli. And then comes early childhood. In early childhood, there is a lot of language development that happens. In fact, the foundation of language development happens during early childhood. So we will see questions as to which is the sensitive period for language development, or what is the significance of early childhood in language development. So this is a very important point that you need to remember. And then comes late childhood. In late childhood, the child starts to develop social skills and interpersonal skills. That is, the child is learning to interact with the people around himself or herself. And there is also a lot of physical growth that happens in this stage. And then comes adolescence. In adolescence, the child is developing a sense of self-identity, and the child is also reaching a stage of sexual maturity. And there is a lot of emotional development that happens, and the importance of friends increases tremendously in the adolescent stage. And then comes early adulthood. At this stage, the person is at the peak health, and there is a quest for intimate relationships. In the previous stage, there is importance of friends. So the person is probably looking at having as many friends as possible and being popular with all his or her friends. Whereas in early adulthood, there is a quest for intimate relationships. It might be of sexual nature, it might be of romantic nature. And then comes young adulthood. In young adulthood, the person starts focusing more on career and life options. And then eventually, when the person reaches mature adulthood, then this is the beginning of the physical decline. That is, the physical health starts to decline gradually. And then aging adulthood is the stage when the decline in physical and mental capabilities is quite fast or rapid. So you have to remember all the details that are in this table, because there are quite a few questions that can be based on this information. Two more points that we have to remember are that development is a progressive series of orderly and coherent changes, which means that development can be predicted to a large extent. For example, we know that the child will grow up and reach a particular height, or there will be a stage after which the child will stop growing physically, and then there is the health will start declining, and then the person will become an old man. So this follows a particular order, and this is the same order that happens in all human beings. Therefore, this is an orderly series of steps, and it is also coherent. That is, a child will definitely go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4, and there is no possibility of somebody moving from stage 4 to stage 2 and then coming back to stage 6. Therefore, development is a series of orderly, that is, it follows a particular order, and it is coherent. That is, there is a logic to this entire process. And the other point to remember is the principle of continuity. That is, development is a continuous process. Whether it is physical or whether it is emotional or whether it is cognitive, there is some development that is constantly happening in a person. And it is a continuous process. That is, development does not stop even for a single day in a person's life. Even if physical growth stops, the mental development or the emotional development or the social development still continues. The next question that we have to answer is, what is learning? So if we look at the definition of learning, then learning is the process of acquiring new knowledge, skills, understanding, behavior, values, attitudes, and preferences. So this is a self-explanatory sentence. And then learning is the change that occurs due to knowledge, practice, or experience. For example, the child goes to school, then the child learns about money in the school. So the child is acquiring some knowledge. Then the child goes to a market and tries to use the money that has been given to him by his parents. So that is practice. And when the child uses that money in a shop to buy some articles, then the child is getting the experience of using that money. Therefore, learning is the change that is happening due to this knowledge, practice, and experience. And learning can be intentional, formal, and controlled. That is, when a child goes to school, it is intentional because the child wants to get knowledge. And it is in a formal atmosphere, and it is controlled because you know what the child is going to learn. Whereas learning can be unintentional, informal, or uncontrolled as well. Because when the child is interacting with people in a random manner, right? When the child is going out to play, the child will interact with different people, different friends. So the child will learn about different things. So the child might learn things which were not intended as well. So it might be unintentional learning. And all these unintentional interactions can be happening in an informal setting. That is, the child is not in school, so it is not formal. It is informal because it can happen in a playground, it can happen in a friend's house, and it can be uncontrolled because what the child is learning here cannot be controlled by the parents or the teachers. Therefore, these are the two main types of learning that will happen. That is, intentional, formal and controlled, or unintentional, informal and uncontrolled. Now that we have seen the meaning of growth, development and learning, if you look at what is the connection between these three concepts, we see that development consists of both growth, which is the physical attributes which can be measured, and also learning, which are the qualitative or the mental attributes. Therefore, development includes both growth and learning. Now, if we look at the various aspects of development, we see that physical development is the easiest. We know that when a child is born, the child is going to grow and the child is going to reach the next stage, which is early childhood and adolescence and adulthood. So the child is going to grow physically. And then the other aspects of development, which are not measurable, are actually qualitative. For example, a person's language is going to improve as the person grows older and interacts with a lot of people. And the person will also grow emotionally. And there is also cognitive development that happens. And there is social development which happens where the person is learning to interact with the people around him or her. And then there is moral development which happens where the person is learning to take moral decisions. So development consists of all these different aspects. In physical development, the one question that is very frequently appearing in all the question papers is about motor skills. So the child develops two types of skills. First is the gross motor skills and then the fine motor skills. And the child will develop the gross motor skills first, and only then he or she will develop the fine motor skills. So the gross motor skills are those skills which require the usage of large muscles. For example, to walk or to run or to jump or to swim or to throw something, you need to use the larger muscles in your hands or legs. Therefore, the large muscles are used for gross motor skills. And this is what the child learns first. And then comes the fine motor skills. For fine motor skills, the child has to use the smaller muscles in the body. It might be fingers, it might be toes. So these might be activities like writing or coloring or dialing numbers on the phone, turning keys, buttoning clothes. So for all these activities, the child has to learn to control the smaller muscles in his or her body. Therefore, the child first learns the gross motor skills and then the fine motor skills. All the other aspects of development, such as language, emotions, cognitive, social, and moral, we will cover in the subsequent parts of this video series because these are covered in detail under various topics of the syllabus. When we look at language development, we will look at the various theories developed by people like Piaget, Vygotsky, Skinner, Chomsky, and Bandura. When we look at emotional development, we will study about what are positive and negative emotions and how they affect learning. And we will also look at an interesting concept called the Plutchik's wheel of emotion. In the video covering cognitive or mental development, we will look at the various theories that are important from a syllabus perspective, such as Piaget, Vygotsky, multiple factor, and multiple intelligence. When we reach the discussion on social development, we will study about Vygotsky and Erik Erikson's theories. And in the video about moral development, we will study Kohlberg's theory of moral development in detail. Next, let us look at some of the factors which affect the development of a child. Remember that this is not the complete list of all the factors because the complete list will be very lengthy. So these are some of the important factors that affect the development of a child. The first one is heredity, and this is something that we inherit from our parents through our genes and through our DNA. So heredity definitely affects the physical development of a child. Does it affect the mental development or the cognitive development? That is a question that is still being debated by various scientists. But heredity definitely affects the physical development because by looking at the child's parents, we can make an educated guess whether the child will be tall and strong or whether the child will be short. So heredity plays a very important part in the physical development of a child. Next comes environment. So the environment in which the child is being brought up, if that is not conducive, then it affects various aspects of development. For example, if the environment is very polluted, then it can affect the physical growth, it can affect the emotional growth or the mental growth as well, because pollutants like lead have been shown to affect mental development as well. And then we come to nutrition. So nutrition is also very, very important because nutrition not only affects the physical development, but some nutrients also affect the growth of the brain and therefore affect the cognitive and the mental development as well. Therefore, nutrition also plays a very important part in various aspects of development. Then is the sex of the child, that is whether the child is male or female, because if the child is female, the child might develop in some aspects earlier than male child and vice versa. Then comes social interaction, because even if all the other attributes are positive, but the child is not getting enough social interactions, then the social development of the child and the moral development of the child might be stunted. Next is physical activity, that is all the other factors might be good, but if the child is not getting enough exercise, enough physical activity, then various aspects of development are also affected. Therefore, these are some of the factors which affect development. Next, let us see some sample questions from previous question papers. One of the most frequently asked questions is human development is which of the following? Is it quantitative? Is it qualitative? Is it unmeasurable? Or is it both 1 and 2? Now, we know that human development has physical development, which is quantitative, and it has other aspects like mental and emotional and social development, which are qualitative. Therefore, human development is both quantitative and qualitative. Therefore, option 4, which is both 1 and 2, will be the correct answer here. In this question, we are being asked which of the following statement best summarizes the relationship between development and learning. Now, statement C says that development is synonymous with learning, that is, both of them mean the same thing. This is incorrect, because we already have seen that development and learning are not the same thing, and development is a much larger concept which includes learning in it. Therefore, this statement C is incorrect, and any option which has C in it will also be incorrect. So, option 1 and option 2, both of which have C in it, are incorrect. So, we are left with options 3 and 4. Now, both of them have D in it. Therefore, D has to be correct. That is, learning and development are parallel process. That is, both happen in parallel. Now, we have to see whether statement A is correct or B is correct. Now, here the question becomes a little tricky, because in some versions of this question, there is a clarification that we are talking about Vygotsky's theory, right? Because if we are talking about Vygotsky's theory, when we study Vygotsky's theory, we'll see that Vygotsky says that development happens after learning. That is, a child will learn something and only then the child will develop in that aspect. Therefore, if we are talking about Vygotsky's theory, B is correct. Therefore, option 3, which says B and D, that will be the correct answer. If we are not talking about Vygotsky's theory, then the first statement, which says that development and learning affect each other, this is also a correct statement, because development and learning definitely affect each other. If you notice, when a child learns something, then there is mental development, there is cognitive development, and there is moral development, social development. Therefore, learning affects development, and development also affects learning, because if a child's brain does not develop, then learning will not happen. Therefore, development can also affect learning. Therefore, development and learning affect each other. This is a correct statement. Therefore, if we are not specifically talking about Vygotsky's theory, then the last option, which says A and D, this will be the correct answer. So, whenever you see this question, see whether there is clarification on whether we are talking about Vygotsky's theory or we are just talking about development and learning in general, because that will decide which one of these is the correct answer. In this question, we are being asked which of the following age groups falls under the later childhood category. Now, if you remember the table that we discussed earlier in this video, the table where we spoke about the various stages of development on the basis of age. So you can easily answer this question. And even if you don't remember that table, you can still use your common sense to answer this question. For example, if you look at 18 to 24 years, that is adulthood, right? That's a grown-up person. Therefore, this cannot be childhood. Next, we have 3 options. The first one is birth to 6 years. Now, birth to 6 years has to be early childhood. It cannot be later childhood because the child is just born. Therefore, this has to be early childhood. So we'll eliminate this. Now we have 2 options. There is option 1, which is 11 to 18 years, and then there is 6 to 11 years. So if birth to 6 years is early childhood because the child is just born, then 6 to 11 years has to be later childhood. So this is the correct answer. And 11 to 18 years is adolescence. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in some textbooks, this is mentioned as 12 to 18 years, and in some textbooks, it is mentioned as 11 to 18 years. So don't pay too much attention to this 11 or 12 because both of them are correct. In this question, we are being asked as to what happens when there is orderly and progressive changes in a human being due to maturation and experience. If you remember, in one of the previous slides, we discussed that development is defined as a progressive series of orderly and coherent changes. Therefore, development happens when there is orderly and progressive changes in a human being due to maturation and experience. Therefore, the correct answer is option 2. In this question, we are being asked which of the following is a sensitive period pertaining to language development. Now, if you remember, we already discussed about the various stages of development on the basis of age, and we saw that early childhood is something that is very sensitive period for language development. Therefore, early childhood is the correct answer for this question. And with that, we come to the end of this part. If you have any questions or feedback, please put them in the comment section below, and the rest, you know what to do. So take care, stay safe, and I will see you again in the next part of this video series.